Squint.
This video is sponsored by Squarespace, the Razzie Erasmus of website builders. After slipping over last weekend, Razzie needed his team to approach the game in a new way, and that's why he led them all to Squarespace for every training session. The world's easiest to use website builder. In no time at all, Razzie had his squad assembling new websites in moments to deal with the frustration of last week's game. However, they liked. Some started blogs to write it out, detail their frustration. Others used the integrated newsletter features, able to send out whatever they wanted to say. A few made videos and could integrate them and use their social media feeds put onto the site easily. Quagga just tracked his website stats for ages. Sia made some pottery and sold it using their integrated storefront features. Everything's integrated thanks to Squarespace's new AI features. Even the wingers could build a site in no time at all. And if you want to do the same, then please head to the link in the description and use the offer code SQUIDRUGBY to save yourself some money on a brand new lovely shiny website. The continued copyright so-and-so rolls on. We've got another new form. We're going to try something different this week. I hope you like it. I hope you enjoy what is about to come up. It began 7 years ago. A misfiring Springbok team on their worst run of all time turned over a dominant All Blacks team that had won back-to-back World Cups at the Cake Tin in a performance that turned Test rugby on its head and set South Africa up to win back-to-back World Cups of their own. A game that also marked a comeback started by the first Test try for a young winger taking an intercept named Cheslin Colbe. Now, 7 years later, the same thing has happened to create potentially something else brand new as the Springboks put in a remarkable performance in a slightly bizarre game to condemn the All Blacks to their biggest loss of all time, something that nonetheless would only be Wales' fifth biggest loss of the last 12 months. So it's time to break it down, to look into this, to look at what went on. How did the Springboks pull away by such a margin? What went wrong with the All Blacks? And critically, did Sanzar give us footage to use? And the answer to that comes in, they did actually get in touch with us and reach out, and they offered us a deal. And they offered us, we can use 30 seconds of footage per video on YouTube, and we're going to have to be very careful about how we use that. So I'm going to do everything I can to make sure that isn't used up entirely in a compilation of the Springbok coaches celebrating at the end, potentially dancing. We'll keep an eye out for that. And the analysis is going to have to be done through stills. So the Springboks won by a remarkable 43 points to 10. It's time to get into how, because perhaps the most bizarre part of this performance was the fact that the All Blacks in the first half were on balance the better team and probably deserved their narrow lead at half-time. The All Blacks kicked off the scoring through a really well-taken try, finished in the end by debutant Leroy Carter, to give him his proper name pronounced the only way it possibly can be. It all begins with this scrum. The All Blacks run a pretty simple crash phase up through Geordie Barrett, who gets miles beyond the gain line, manages to wriggle out a tackle. Khaleesi here from the flank is forced to pull himself in. Visa begins to wrap around to the side, but he is the only forward that gets round in time. If we look at the next phase then, the All Blacks begin to throw it wide. The backs have all wrapped onto this side, only forward remaining over here and the far winger somewhere just out of shot. The width is on. Khaleesi was the first person into position. He's therefore the only guy that gets to put any kind of pressure on Barrett here as he stands in at 10. The others are just drifting and waiting to cover this space because they're core and left narrow. So they play wide and carry it. They make it way beyond the gain line, way down to the 10-metre line, and the All Blacks then set up for a play that they used a few times. This was clearly something that Scott Robertson identified in the week as a brilliant way to get around the Springbok defence. So one of the critical things the Springboks love is using Peter Toy, even Etzebeth when he's playing, which he wasn't, Sia Khaleesi, guys with enormous work rates and enormous appetites for murders, to go and do those killings. And the All Blacks look to use that against the Springboks. So here they've got a fairly standard smash-up pod of 3. That's just stood here, you've got someone in the boot, but really they're so much like flatter than the rest. The others are stood way back here. It looks like there's only one way this is possibly going. However, this pass comes out the back to Barrett. He then throws it on flat to De Groot here, who's on the wide line, and we see in this moment, Peter Toy right here is flying up. He has only got eyes for De Groot. He goes brilliant and starts to accelerate into it. Something you can't quite see, and if he had perhaps a few seconds more footage, maybe we would. However, Geordie Barrett here is waiting in behind, and De Groot then goes for, as De Toy smashes into him, flicks it behind. Now, if we move on a moment, then what we can see is this has opened up the entire Springbok defence, right? So because du Toit went so hard in on de Groot, it suddenly left one defender here in Willemse in no man's land. It takes one pass from Barrett to get Salvea outside him, and he's able to explode into the space and work down this touch line. He's got Simon Parker outside him, who carries it down the wing and takes it into contact. They're now on the touchline, and the All Blacks look to set up and basically run a very similar play again. Will Jordan is filling in at 10 here with both Barretts out wider, way over there somewhere. And so he throws this miss ball to de Groot again, who is reloaded into shape. Now, they're looking to target Siya Kolisi, who is in here. He is the defender filling that role that Peter du Toit was on the previous phase. He looks at flying on de Groot, and instead de Groot throws it behind and it hits Barrett, who then sends it wide to his namesake, and they can get it right out to width. This goes right down the wing, they play the hands, they get Satiti carrying into the 22. It's a really smart way of trying to get outside that Springbok blitz. They have one defender fly out of line and really attack the midfield, and they always look to put someone opposite that and then just drop off a little pass and get it right out to the wide channel. They go for an extreme version of this right here. The All Black attack is so congested in here, right? There's so many players that worked out of that side, having previously attacked it as a short side. Now they just linger in there. So the Springbok defence does the same. He goes, okay, all the attackers are here, so let's attack in there as well. Geordie Barrett then goes, brilliant, I see what's on here, and goes for the massive cross kick over the top. This lands right in the hands of Simon Parker, a man who has the name, temperament, and skill set of a dad whose son started playing a few years ago, went, you know what, I fancy going back to touch, and was so good that he got into the All Blacks. He goes for the most telegraphed but lovely out the back pass in the world, and RD Surveyor loops around and carries it up to the try line. Hotham spins it right away. The All Blacks are set up 10 metres away from the breakdown, right? So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, potentially even 5 here defenders who are all being taken out by just the pass. So this then hits critically the first man in de Groot once again, who can slip it out the back to Will Jordan. This guy here is a man called Peter du Toit, and he loves to eat wingers. And he sees Will Jordan right in front of him and goes, brilliant, this is my time to make a shot. The fact that it's gone to the first man rather than the last man means also that he has to come in critically. He is working his way inwards on Jordan. So Peter du Toit is looking up and he's going, okay, right. He's thinking of going inside. I'll look outside. And then the pass flies right across the face from Will Jordan. And suddenly du Toit, having hunted inwards, is forced to work back outwards, and it leaves suddenly him in kind of no man's land. So Moody is right here. He is isolated. He is being targeted completely. So Titi catches this ball opposite. Moody is coming onto him, and he's essentially left with nothing he can do. Willemse here is just filling back into line. He's been away. He's kind of getting back there. He's working back around here, but there are already 2 All Blacks ready to work into his space with 2 more out wide. And so when we get there, right, Mackenzie throws a lovely ball in behind as he's being nailed. Bowden here looks very casual, very, happenstance, but it gets it wide, it gets it outside Moody, outside Colbe, who comes in on the tackle. So it then gets into the hands of Tupou Vaa'i here as the edge forward, who then links up and throws a wide pass finally to put Leroy Carter over in the corner. It's a lovely bit of construction. The All Blacks had one move that opened up the Springbok defence so brilliantly. They ran it 3 times in succession, and quickly enough, by targeting that middle defender, by just overloading that middle defender and forcing them to weigh 3 options and always look for the smash tackle and try and use the Springboks' aggression against them, it allowed them to open them up and score a lovely try. However, as the game went on, chances for the All Blacks to run this move slowly started to close off. As we see when we get into this moment, that is in the way. We need something better than a whiteboard. We need, if we got like a rag over here, like this'll do, this like random rag to wipe the board clean. So the All Blacks are trying to run a very similar move. They've just ran it in midfield. They've caught them off. They did just smash it up. And they look to go wide. They look to go to width. RJ Simon here has filled in. He's in that role. He's looking to fly up. However, critically, right, have a look at the work of Cheslin Colbe. So he is right here. I am going to, as we play this on from the same angle, leave Colbe's circles up. So you get an idea of where he's been and where he is going. Colbe has moved himself backwards. He has dropped himself back a tiny little bit as this ball starts to go wide. Snyman slows his line speed slightly because he's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, a whole bunch of options here, right? Colbe is thinking, okay, there's a chance here that you've got a bunch of options. You've got McKenzie, you've got the Barrett. He might slide a kick in behind and put it into the 22. He is covering this. You've got Farsi here, is kind of looking to track across, but there's still a lot of dead space back here. And so Colbe starts to fall back. He starts to slide back out of line, but he is still behind the main Springbok line. And he is forced to sprint back up, having just dropped back about 5 seconds earlier. So Colbe only begins to advance once Billy Proctor here catches the ball. So Proctor goes, "Hi, I'm an international centre. I know how to draw and give." So he starts to do that. Colbe kind of dummies the tackle. He kind of leans in and moves his kind of hips and he kind of sways in a little second and then tilts back outwards right as the pass is coming. And sure enough, bam, bats it up into the air for himself to regather, and a few seconds later, Colbe is crossing the try line. This was a critical turning point in the game. I can't quite overstate how much the All Blacks, for that first 20 odd minutes, were on top. They were in control of the game, and as we just saw a moment ago, Farsi is the only player covering back, and there is more, significantly more, All Black support than there are Springboks covering back. This is a try in the other direction if Colbe doesn't pick this off. Instead, it's 7-0, despite the Springboks being broadly outplayed for this opening quarter. Colbe himself also was quietly having a bit of a mare. He was not having a particularly good game. And then he turns up with 7 points. It's what world-class players do, is they produce moments when you need them most. And so he produced another around the same time, just beforehand. The Springboks run this scrum, and they run a really lovely move. They, firstly, critically, get the advantage off the scrum, and Reinach goes, okay, great, let's play. He fires a really flat ball into Willemse, who crashes over the gain line. He critically targets Beauden Barrett here. Now, the All Blacks have a few things to do in the backfield, but one of them is they drop Beauden Barrett back constantly. He is a world-class fullback himself, so even when he's playing 10, he always is very often spending time in the backfield. So they send Willemse right at him, right? Then the ball is so fast. We have Ethan Hooker here on his tail. He's the only guy who goes in. Khaleesi gets there just in case he's needed, but he isn't really. The ball is already in Reinach's hands. He can play it away. Beauden Barrett is tied in here, so critically is Geordie Barrett as well. So the ball is played right out. As we get to here, they then play one pass on, and Feinberg and Ngoma takes the ball here. And if we look up, right, we can see Jamie McKenzie has already come into the line here. He has come up to cut off this overlap because the Springboks have brought all 7 backs round to this side. We've got Colbe here on the wing, we've got Farsi and Moody, we've got Sasha Feinberg and Ngoma Zulu, we've got Reinach himself, and then we've got Hooker and Willemse were in the ruck. Everyone is on this side. Everyone is accounted for. The only player this side of the ruck here is the entire front row who are still working around. There's nobody on this half of the field. However, if you're the All Blacks, you can't leave that undefended. You can't just leave half the field unmarked. So Simon Parker here waits here, like around here, he's around here, and then just out of shot, you've then got Will Jordan, further just up there, that's Will Jordan there, that's what he looks like, he's a real man, and they are both waiting on this touchline. And this is the really important thing, right? They are marking absolutely nobody. Will Jordan, normally, his role as a member of the back three is to pendulum, which means essentially he would then work into the backfield, work into the fullback position, allowing McKenzie to come up flat here so that that space is covered by the winger coming across from the far side to get into position. And yet, it isn't. Feinberg and Ngoma puts the kick in and it slides in behind. Now, Geordie Barrett does a brilliant job here, just trying to identify that and reading that and getting back in time, but he's not as quick as this lad, Cheslin Colbe, who managed to get on the outside of McKenzie, work around him and beat Barrett to the ball. Will Jordan nowhere to be seen, having stayed to mark up the entire other side of the pitch. A brilliant, phenomenal tackle by Geordie Barrett saves a try. But fascinatingly, right, there's also a conversation that we kind of can't show after this, where McKenzie pulls Will Jordan aside and kind of bollocks him behind the try line for going, where were you? Like, we're relying on you. And Jordan's going, well, there was no one covering my side. It's a really smart play by the Springboks to just open up the All Black backfield. However, we then get to the second half and suddenly there are turning points aplenty. This scrum is dominant, gets completely on top, but critically, right, it doesn't just go forward. It then, once they start going forward, turns sideways. It comes in at the angle, and this means here, right, if you look at Colbe in particular, he is making himself long. He is blocking himself off from any of these guys getting past. You've got Du Toit on the other side. He's completely blocking. He's actually holding Salvator in, meaning neither of them can get out, and you've got a complete block here. Reinach has a free passage to pick up and charge himself, which he makes contact, and then he presents the ball up. He presents it up, and Colbe is able to beat Reinach to the ball. Picks it up himself, is popped off the ground rather than presented back. Colbe takes it and charges downfield, getting right up to the 22, eventually taking contact well inside the 22. He goes to ground, and immediately, right, you have one player comes in, just goes straight over the ruck to clear out to make sure no threats get in, and instead of locking over the ball, it allows Esterhuizen to just come in and pick it up, and he can instantly play. He then looks up, and all of the other Boks, really smartly, haven't gone, okay, let's get into regular positions, let's just overload one side, the side furthest away from where the All Black cover is. Because all the All Black forwards were involved in the scrum way back on the far side, they're having to work so much distance to get down from there, down to here in the opposite corner, down 50 metres away, right? So none of the forwards have got back, and the All Black backs in turn are also scrambling. Some of them are still going, okay, well, if it goes this way, then like Mackenzie stays there, some of the others stay here, and it means you've got, you know, the wingers right out there, and it means then that you've got 1, 2, 3 All Black backs have got there, only one forward in Satiti has managed to get anywhere around there, and still there is numbers spare. Esterhuizen throws a brilliant ball over the top, Colbe takes it, goes for a little side step, beats someone and scores. Again, not having a brilliant first 40 minutes, but pops up and scores 2 critical tries to take the Springboks into the lead in a game where they weren't performing. It's what world-class players do, and it's what the team who are so disciplined in their game plan can deliver on all the time. Because that became the critical thing about the Springbok performance, was they were consistently just accurate in how they executed the game plan. It's being spoken of now as one of the most flairful or exciting or even just best Springbok performances of all time. And I think it wasn't quite that. It was one of the most disciplined. This was a team who were presented with a side who got on top of them, and instead they stuck to the process, stuck to the game plan, and gradually, slowly turned the entire game to gain all momentum themselves. Something we see right here. So there were also tiny innovations and changes in defence. The All Blacks go to play the exact same move that they scored off from playing 3 times in a row earlier during that first half, except this time Jacques isn't there, he's on holiday in Ireland for a little bit. Felix, Jerry, Tony, the gang have all had their input, have all had their say on this play. They've all seen what's happened and they've made tiny adjustments. So here we have that initial pod, right? You've got a prop, you've got someone alongside, you've got a distribution in the boot, you've then got a secondary pod, you've then got the wide shapes out there. You've got over here, Tupou Vaa'i is calling for it in the wide channels, something we saw in the previous example. So the All Blacks go to run the same move. They pop it to the prop who looks to play it behind to Mackenzie here, except as Mackenzie plays it, right, Du Toit does something slightly different. He doesn't go in for the tackle. Instead, he just tries to keep ahead of the ball. In terms of the ball's working this way, outwards, he tries to always make sure he is closer to this touchline than the ball is. And critically, also works at the space rather than the man. Normally, we would say to Du Toit, come in here on Mackenzie or on Satiti and go, what I want to do here is I want to eat some ribs, so I am going to smash in and time is here. However, instead, what we see is here. Du Toit does not do that. He works past. He just ignores the tackle and works around, works outwards and manages to get round him, meaning that the space is closed off. In turn, Ethan Hooker shoots in and comes right in on Barrett, looking to put pressure on the pass and meaning it can't get cleanly to Tupou Vaa'i, who is in space. And yet, by the time we get there, Esterhuizen has already backtracked back and worked across as a kind of catch-up defender, and Du Toit hasn't committed himself to a tackle. He's worked off again. It was just like a really smart moment of going, okay, we don't need to change anything about our system. The All Blacks have worked our way around it. All we need to do is be 10% less aggressive. And maybe we don't make one big shot and don't create a knock-on that phase, but what we'll do is just contain them instead of looking to smash them. And it led to an enormous change. The All Blacks suddenly weren't able to get outside them in the same way. And slowly but surely, with their attack starting to falter and unable to create the same opportunity they could in the first half, the All Blacks started to get frustrated and started to run some quite daft plays. This all begins with a line-out. They, for some reason, call it right to the tail and just allow the Springboks to get in front of them with such a short lifting pod. I don't quite know why. The Springboks interestingly moved back to kind of like a more of a mirror system defensively to try and like man mark and mark up who's there. It allows Nokia to get in the air and steal the line out. The Springboks then cave it in, get up to the try line, and from here, right, they start doing their usual bullshit of dragging bodies in, pinning people on the floor, looking to drag them all in. Beauden Barrett is involved here. He's the fly half. He's on this side. You've got Finlay Christie watching the short side. That's fine. You want someone watching there just in case. And Geordie Barrett then, because there's so many All Blacks piled onto the floor and pinned in by the likes of Toy by that's a Khaleesi's got like 3 people on the floor here. Geordie Barrett has come in much narrower than they'd want him to be. Really, they want him like further out. And instead, it means then in a second's time, once this ball starts to come out, Quinn Tupaia right here slips over. Because he is on his own, he's been in the starting blocks and he knocks himself off balance. Knowing that Geordie Barrett is sucked into this ruck right over here, he's got no support outside him, he's got to do this all himself. He's probably going to have to triple job. He instead slips over and is only really able to single job. This means that the ball comes out here. He is sucked in there and the ball goes across the face of Moody and onto Willemse. Willemse then looks up, right? And he is already on this drifting line. All of the Springboks are all running this kind of very France style outside drifting overs line, right? Except for right in the corner, Hooker, who is running very, very straight. And against them, you've then got 2 All Blacks running these kind of like unders and short lines, both running inwards at the same space. And what Willemse does is, in a move that some may consider unconventional, basically run at the space between them. He just goes, okay, both of them are pincering inwards, I'll go for that space they're pincering for and hope it throws them off and throws the timing off. And sure enough, he slides right between them and goes over to score the try. Also got pricked in the bottom by a bunch of arrows, which wasn't really shown on the TV coverage, but I hope you enjoyed regardless. Really, really nice, really well taken try. Then moments later, the Springboks have now got so much momentum. That try just changed the momentum of the game hugely. It felt like the All Blacks had got one thing wrong. They got one moment where Geordie Barrett couldn't get into position quickly enough. They'd thrown one line out wrong and suddenly they were 14 points behind the game they were previously completely on top of. And you felt their momentum start to slip away. And now, Boks hang a really great kick. This is a superb kick. And Kane Moody, this is the benefit of having a winger playing in the centres, is able to get up and beat Mackenzie in the air. He takes to the ground, they go for a couple of pick and goes, they get up into the 22, they make that extra yardage, and then this is just so simple. It's one of the most frustrating tries I'm sure you'll ever see. If you're Scott Robertson, you're pulling your hair out. Like, there will be thirds level coaches across the world looking at this and going like, we wouldn't let that in. And yet it's so simple. When you've got a team who are misfiring, who are frustrated in the way they are, often you see players perhaps go for too much. And so we have Fabian Hollande here, looks to fly up out of line to make the big hit, and those outside him don't. Tamati Williams is not doing that. He's drifting outwards to link up with his fellow players. The rest of the line is drifting because there's so many Springboks over here. You've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 Springboks on this side versus, what, 4 All Blacks, plus the fullbacks starting to fold round. And so everyone else goes, bam, let's drift across and just cover and just make a soak-up tackle and just get to them. Instead, Hollande goes, no, I'm flying up, and it opens up the space for a really, really easy try for Snyman, who just burst right through. Tamati Williams could do better, but really this is like an overread by Hollande, who's just trying to make the big aggressive shot, and in the end, can't do it. Snyman goes over and scores the try. And then, moments later, the All Blacks put in a really good kick. Beauden Barrett sends it long, managed to put some pressure on, except last second, there's a lovely swerve by Ethan Hooker here, and he goes right through. He makes it. What you haven't seen here is like 70 metres of break. He does really well. It's a great run. Maybe that should be our 30 seconds of footage.
Von Williams überrannt. Jetzt Hooker. Oh, der große Mann. Direkt durch die Mitte. Geht, Ethan Hooker.
It was good, wasn't it? It was a good break. Well done to him. So Hooker's just made that break. He's got up to 22. We've got Lou De Jager here, makes a really nice involvement, just kind of clears out beyond the ruck, make sure no one can get over the ball, and we then have it played away pretty swiftly right over to the other side. So they get over here and Geordie Barrett fills out on this far side initially, right out on this touchline over here, except then, moments later, they work it back the other side. And as they go down to that blind side and play it wide, we see Geordie Barrett works right round, comes right round and fills in over here. This moment, if we go back even a second earlier, this is covered. This is fine. There's Will Jordan here, you've got the scrum halves filled across, you've got David McKenzie's coming up from backfield. There's no need for Geordie Barrett to also wrap around from deep, and yet he does. He comes in, fills on that blind side. You have Finlay Christie is getting up and will fill that space anyway, and even in the worst case scenario, right, as we can see right here, you have Beauden Barrett in the backfield, And he is able to potentially cover this if needs be. He can come up there, job's a good one. Except Geordie Barrett is now over here. He is not, critically, here, which is the position he should be in. Instead, Quinn Tupac is having to work as both centres and fill up, and he floods up. And that means Ruben Love, therefore, is forced on this wing here to fill in the flat line. Now, if Geordie Barrett is back here, instead of working around to the far side, it means Ruben Love can perhaps be stood here, just a few metres further back, and therefore, when the cross kick comes in, he can be maybe here instead, and able to take it and potentially beat Peter Toy to the ball. As it is, however, he very much does not. Toy takes it, he offloads, and Quagga Smith goes over to score. This was a Springbok performance of unbelievable discipline. This was a performance in which we saw them come out and look at an All Black team who in those final stages suddenly started making odd defensive errors. Every error the All Blacks made in those final stages was tiny. It was a player overfolding, it was a player shooting up slightly too quickly, it was a player not quite filling in or overfilling in. And every time the Springbok system stuck to their guns and was unbelievably accurate. This was what the Springboks came down to. It was perhaps a performance that is being often attributed to kind of the Tony Brown revolution, this new, more open style of play from the Springboks. But I think really, this was Razzie all over. This was a performance of a team who know their game plan and stick to it no matter what. In the first half, there were things that weren't working. They fixed a bunch of them, and other ones, they knew they just wouldn't make those errors again because they're better players than that. Sure enough, that happened to be the case. The players that were misfiring went on and scored 2 tries. The players who weren't quite standing up changed and were 10% less aggressive and landed critical tackles. It became an unbelievably well-balanced performance. It didn't feel necessarily like the Springboks just running riot and dominating the All Blacks. It was a pretty even game for most of running time. And then the Springboks pulled away. It felt more akin to the sort of performance the Springboks put in against a team like Wales or someone who may stand up and give them a game for 60 minutes. And then as the game wears on, they pull away and they take control and they score several tries in quick succession instead of 1 or 2 to take control of the game as we normally see against the All Blacks. And yet it was also an All Black performance that felt slightly bizarre. I don't quite know what led to, beyond like odd emotional factor, just conceding other tries, so many of those errors taking place in such quick succession. I think there's a very good chance that a team like Scotland, who have never beaten them before, may well have, if presented with the opportunities, gone on and taken those chances, at least 1 or 2 of them, and won the game from there. And yet I also don't know if there's another team in the world, perhaps other than the All Blacks themselves, who would have managed to take as many of them as the Springboks did. It was a hugely, hugely impressive performance, and one that I wonder, perhaps, if it will start something brand new yet again. Thank you for watching now all the way to the end, despite there being so much of my face in it, and apologies enormously to both 2 Cents and to Sam Lana for the fragrant misuse of a whiteboard. Can't believe I'm sitting here gimmick, I'm really sorry. That is a temporary format. We wanted to try some things. Obviously, we definitely wanted to cover this game after everything that happened, but it's tricky. We need to find ways around it with the current situation. So wanted to try something other than discussion this week because, you know, heard a lot of feedback. So if people like this, please let us know and we'll see how things go. In the meantime, we've got videos on every single game from the Women's World Cup going on in England at the minute. That's over on More Squid Rugby. We've got more going up on this channel as well as we move deeper into the tournament. So there's loads happening, and we'll see you very soon for, indeed, more rugby.